Hello everyone, it's Jayden here for Student Pages. Hope you're all doing very well today. Today we are here with Annabelle More O'Ferrall to talk about student investments. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely our pleasure. So obviously finance and investment is something that a lot of students should be looking into, but perhaps some of us don't at times that we need to. So of course you are an excellent port of call to speak to about this. So I think to track back a little bit and get into yourself, what prompted your interest in finance and investment banking in the first place?
Well, I grew up in the UK, but my parents weren't involved in finance or investment banking at all. So it was really something that was never ever talked about at home. But I sometimes, in my early teens, I began to hear the parents of my friends, if I was round at their house or we were having lunch or something, they would talk about it. And I quickly realized that this is something that I'm going to have to teach myself because I'm not getting it from home in the same way that my other friends were. So it was really from that my interest was more or a desperation. If I don't do it myself, then no one's going to do it for me. And in those days there was no internet. That's how far back we're talking. And I remember going down the high street in I lived in London. So I remember going down the high street and visiting four different banks to pick up the leaflets about the different accounts and the different interest rates that they offered. And I remember walking down, picking them all up, and then going home and basically flicking through them. And that's how it really started. That's about sort of saving in bank accounts. But as far as sort of stocks and shares and actual investments in the stock market goes, I was still absolutely clueless at that stage. But it's got to start somewhere.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think anyone going straight into that world would be a bit baffled. That's a
Yeah,
whole other kettle of
yeah,
fish as far as I understand it.
yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you are a solicitor. Coming
yeah,
from a legal background, then, what were
yeah.
some of the most challenging aspects about learning about finance and investment banking in that sort of world?
Okay. Well, the law that I did was I used to set up investment funds basically. So and the law that I did was all related to that. But my job as the lawyer on the transaction or advising my clients was to make sure that they were doing the right thing, that the processes and the systems were all correct, and that the contracts were all correct, and that what they did not only was according to the law, but also provided shareholders with the protection that it was supposed to do. So I really wasn't thinking about my job and what I did from a sort of numbers or monetary perspective. And I remember, a couple of years in thinking, gosh, I'm not really thinking about this in the way I'd like to think about this. I'm thinking about this in the way that I need to think about it to do my job. But to really gain some personal benefit out of this, I need to be thinking more and looking more and understanding more how the bankers are looking at this, how the accountants are looking at this. And I remember that being a particular frustration in my earlier years. I just didn't have the capacity or the time. I worked very, very long hours. I'd frequently be in the office till 9 or 10, as one does in the early parts of one's career. And then as time went on, probably when I was about 5, maybe 6 years qualified, I was so experienced at what I was doing, I could almost do it slightly automatically, which freed up some headspace for me to start thinking about things from a monetary perspective, which is exactly what I did. And once I did start doing that, we had Google by that stage, we had the internet. So I would, often in meetings or as I was doing my work, I'd kind of keep a pad of paper and a pen by my desk. And I was only right to write down on it, things I wanted to look up afterwards. So I would basically. And that's what I did. And then I would go away. And maybe when I had a bit of time, when, sometimes in between deals, you have maybe a day just to kind of cool down a bit before the next one starts. Or on a bank holiday, sometimes I often work bank holidays, I would then look it up. And so the challenge for me was making the switch from the legal contract process, making sure this is all going to work in a really nice, organized fashion, to is my client making money? Is this a good deal for them? Are shareholders going to make money? Why is this a good sell for them? That was my big challenge. But to be honest, I've moved more thinking that way now, but I'm still learning. You're always still learning in this market.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds a lot like jumping through a lot of hoops and seeing what works.
Yeah.
It's almost like the learning process really is something you can only teach yourself through
Absolutely.
trial and error and
No,
experience.
because everybody's got a different view and everybody explains things differently. So you really do, somebody who wants to get involved in this needs to be interested or like me, really needs it because they're not going to get it from anyone else. That's the key thing. They say that
Yeah,
need is the mother of invention.
that's a very applicable quote, I'd say,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's a brilliant way of putting it.
yeah.
I think then in every aspect of life, in all careers, everyone sort of has that idea of, oh, if I'd have done this differently or if I'd considered this earlier on. For you, what advice would you personally have given yourself much earlier in life when you were starting out on your own finances and your own savings?
I think two things. Start earlier, definitely. Start much, much earlier. Even if it's a little bit here and there, just start reading, listening to podcasts, doing that kind of thing. Just start it as early as possible. And I should have started earlier. And I think one of the things that I do remember I used to really be put off reading sort of any of the financial press or any articles that were sort of relating to money or pensions or anything like that. And also was really put off listening to podcasts because there are so many podcasts out there. I was really put off listening to them because I thought, well, I'm not going to understand all of it. And I maybe read a couple of articles, didn't understand all of it, listen to a couple of podcasts and would be lost within minutes, or the podcast wouldn't follow my sort of train of thought or what I really wanted it to talk about. And that would really put me off. And so I sort of didn't really bother. And what I've realized is you've got to read and you've got to listen, even if you don't understand all of it. Because by reading and listening, you're getting used to the terminology, you're getting used to the ideas, you're getting in the zone, it all incrementally builds up. Now I listen to podcasts and I read articles, and I can honestly say it's quite rare for me to understand 100% of one of those articles or one of those podcasts. But I
Yeah.
get the general gist and I get the idea and I get the flavor. And often you find that these articles and these podcasts are all actually quite often they talk about similar topics, but they just phrase it in a different way. So if you're hearing the same thing over and over again, but in a different way, it really begins to go in, even by osmosis sort of thing. You gradually learn, you gradually develop. So that is what I would probably look back and say. Start earlier and don't be put off if you don't understand all of it. Just go for it and keep going for it because it does actually all begin to make sense. I think being a lawyer, lawyers, we had to be totally in control. We're very solution orientated. So our clients would come to us, they want to do this, this, and this. It was our responsibility to sort it quickly. So for me, listening to the podcast or listening to reading the article, and I didn't get it, it was like, oh my God, maybe okay, I'm not specialized in this field. I shan't, couldn't, shouldn't go there. But you must go there. You must go there, and you must keep going there because gradually it all builds up. So that's what I would look back and tell myself earlier, and just do it, even if you don't understand it.
And that eventually the jargon will start to translate itself. Mm.
Totally, but and people use the same jargon. So you'll hear the jargon explained slightly differently, and you'll remember the word, but then somebody else will say it in a different way, and it'll all begin to fit. And they say that repetition is a very, very good way of learning. So you're hearing this stuff over and over again, and it comes, it comes good in the end.
It's like my dad with his job. My dad's involved in industry four, and I had no idea what he was on about for the most part. But then the more he spoke about it, suddenly certain words, I was like, oh, hang on, I know what this is. So absolutely, I
Exactly.
can see how that kind of concept, that
Yeah.
learning process would work.
Yeah, no, 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 exactly, exactly. Learning is a slow game. That's why we all go to school for, 14 years until we're 18, and then we go on to uni because, it takes years. So you've got to start young.
No, absolutely. So I mean, speaking of university and students, then, like I mentioned at the start, there's a lot of students that either know very little or know absolutely nothing about
Okay,
investment and finance.
okay.
So my question is then, how do you explain such complex financial concepts to individuals that might not have any or very little experience with financial literacy?
Okay, that's a really good question because I've just done this actually. The way I do it is I draw a diagram. I draw diagrams of the different money flows basically. So money coming in, money coming out, where it's going, the different bank accounts, the different, the DIY platform, the stocks and shares, the company. And I use different colored pens. I had to do it recently. My youngest has just turned 18. So I wanted to sit down
Right.
and explain an ISA. So, she sort of stared at me rather blankly, and I began to draw a diagram. That's how I did it. And I did it with my son as well when he turned 18. Yeah, so that's what I did. That's what I did. Draw a diagram. And I would recommend this to you or to anyone. Draw a diagram, and understand where the money comes in, where the money goes out, where you put it, it's really, really important. And I would never expect, one could sit and lecture for hours on how something works. It's really hard to hold on to it all and remember it all. But if you've got a diagram that's different colors and stuff like that, you can just keep it and then go back and look to, the words can follow the arrows sort of thing. So it's easier to remember like that.
And you can refer to it that way as well, where, I
Absolutely.
think when you're just given an information dump, like you say, with all this new info, it can very much go in one ear and out the other, not because you're
Absolutely.
not listening, but because it's just
Absolutely.
so much to take on at once. It's a
Yeah.
whole new world for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, it is. It really, really is. But draw a diagram, use different color pens, and then it all begins to make sense.
Yeah, no, fantastic. That'd be so helpful, I'm sure. So, other than setting out these graphs and things, then, sorry, diagrams, because
Yeah.
that aside, then, is there any resources or tools online or maybe apps that you'd recommend to students for this topic? Or would you
Yeah, there
say
are.
stick to, yeah, there's some good
No,
ones.
there's a lot out there. There is a lot out there. But it's a little bit like reading a newspaper. Sometimes you have to read 10 column inches just to get one column inch of fact, basically. So, there is masses out there. There's a huge amount of information out there. But for somebody who really is completely starting out, not on the investing side, but just understanding savings, understanding budgeting, a very general introduction. What is a pension? Sort of thing, that kind of thing. There is a book called Your Money Matters, and it is produced by Young Enterprise, and it's got the backing of Martin Lewis, who's the very famous money saving expert. You can download it for free from the Young Enterprise website. And it's like a basic introduction. It divides the world of money into lots of little sections, each section a couple of pages, and it's got a couple of quizzes at the bottom to make sure that you really understand it. And it was kind of designed for teachers, actually, because there's the book for the students and then there's also the teacher's guide. So, but you can get both of them free online. That is a really, really, really good starting point. It talks all about the basics of saving, budgeting, borrowing, pensions, and stuff like that. So, I would definitely start there. The FT. And I know a lot of people get put off by the FT because it's the Financial Times and it's a big and weighty paper sort of thing. But it is actually a brilliantly written newspaper, very, very clear, very straightforward. But the Financial Times have set up a financial literacy charity. And it's called Flick, F-L-I-C. And the website is FTFLIC, so ftflick.com. And again, that's primarily aimed at educators and teachers. But there are a lot of guides and a lot of information on there that you could just pull down and read for yourself. It's like a sort of little bit like bits of it can be used as a sort of mini textbook effectively. So I would definitely look there. I mean, I was looking at it the other day and I noticed they had a sort of little video and presentation about crypto. And I don't know anything about crypto. I really, really don't. So I kind of made a mental note, right? That's if I want to learn about crypto, that's where I've got to go, basically. So I need to go back and I need to look at that. So even so someone like me is still using it. So I would definitely start, yeah, at the Your Money Matters, look at ftflick.com for the guides. And then somebody's interested in learning about investing. Okay. So for example, you and I were talking about lifetime ISAs beforehand. A,
Yes, yeah.
a good place because a lifetime ISA, you would probably go to one of the DIY investment platforms. I don't know if you've heard of places like Fidelity, AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown, Best
Briefly,
Invest.
yeah.
Yeah, they are platforms, they're online platforms, they're websites where you can go to invest. So they act as like an online broker. You go there, you deposit your money and you choose where to invest, and they go and do all the dealing for you and send you back contract notes to show you what you've bought, and you can check in every day with them about how much it's worth or what it's gained, what it's lost. And their websites and those, they're called platforms and they're called DIY platforms because you choose your own investments on them. But as a result, they have got a huge amount of information on there, enormous. It's not just about the investments, it's about what is a pension, it's about what is a power of attorney, it's about what is a lifetime ISA, what are the rules, all of that kind of thing. So they've got loads and loads of guides on there. All of them have. The one I tend to look at most of all is Fidelity and Best Invest, and go on there, search, put in the search engine what it is, and these guides pop up, and you can use them as sort of mini textbooks, basically. And they're very, very short, 3, 4 pages. There's a really good one on pensions. The Fidelity one on pensions is really clear, really, really good, explaining what it is, what happens when you put your money into it, when can you get it back, how much it costs, all of that kind of thing. So I would use those three. You could almost do them step one, step two, step three. So the Your Money Matters, ftflick.com, and then, once okay, I want to read about pensions, then look at the DIY platforms and their guides. Or, as I said to you, do go and look up a lifetime ISA, what it is, how do I do it, how much does it cost, what does it mean, when will I get my money back? So yeah, so do those to sort of get a general grounding. And then I think once you've got a general grounding, something that sounds as if it's really for the experience, but it isn't for the experience. It really is for, you can start at any time, is to keep an eye on the financial press at the weekends. So on Saturdays, the Times has a money section on Saturdays, and the Financial Times has a money section on Saturdays, and the Sunday Times has a money section on Sundays, basically. And they are not money as in it's all about business and highfalutin, complicated investments. They are personal finance sections. Personal finance. They have got tables showing you which are the best credit card rates, best savings accounts rates, best current account rates. They've also got lots of commentary and, lots of articles about things that are topical in the news. You don't have to be sophisticated to read all of them. They've got a couple of really sophisticated articles where they have a couple of fund managers speak about what they're investing in at the moment. So those can be quite complex, but there's a lot of really quite simple information. And if you make a point of just skimming them, not reading it cover to cover like the sports pages, but just have quick turning the pages. Is there anything that catches your eye? Is there anything that's relevant to me? And then quickly reading it, you can really build up a bit of information. I mean, one of the things that I've started doing is, because pension law keeps changing, and what the government is doing with the pensions, they keep changing the rules about what you can put in, what you can, how much you can put in, whether it's going to be
Mm.
subject to inheritance tax, what the taxes are around it. So every time, and I'm not retired officially yet, I've still got another 10 years. So every time I see one of these articles, I actually just cut it out and put it in a folder because I might need it one day.
That's
So
clever.
yeah, I just put a little date on it. Sometimes you go back and you look through these articles and you realize, oh, that's completely out of date because they never did this or they changed it again, sort of thing, and you just chuck it away. But it's all there. It's all there. But yeah, so that's what I would, yeah, I would do those three. The first three to build a general knowledge base, and then the financial press to really start embellishing what you know and enhancing what you know.
No, absolutely. I mean, there was obviously a lot there, but thank you for breaking it down in such a structured way because that makes so much sense
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Like you said, speaking from experience, obviously, it can come across as very overwhelming to hear all these big words from these big publications. To hear that it's not as huge and scary as it comes across is really handy, especially when a lot of people don't know where to look. So I think telling us where to look
Yeah.
And again, that it's really not that
It's
mind
not,
blowing.
you've just got to break it down. You've just got to break it down. Something I always used to say to my kids is, life is like a big steak. Imagine a big, fat, juicy steak, and you're having
Oh
it for
no,
supper.
please don't. I'm stuck on meal deals at the minute. You're just making me upset.
You wouldn't eat it all at once, or you wouldn't eat a burger all at once. You just take a bite. And that's what you've just got to do. That world of financial literacy, just take a little bite and just do it slowly, slowly, slowly. Saving, budgeting, and understanding that first. Then, what can I save in? Because actually, investments are just a means of saving. That's all it is. It's just a method of saving and building your money to be bigger in the future.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, what an important time of our lives to do it as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
At student age,
The earlier
yeah.
the earlier you start, the more it is, and it can make a massive, massive difference. I was looking at something the other day, a kid who was an American kid who started saving, I think it was something like $30 a month or whatever when they were 18, and the other one started at 26. And the difference was something, by the time they got to 65, the difference was something like $750,000 between the two of them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was significantly more. So let me think 30 times 12. Okay, so one started at 18, saving $360 a year. Okay. The other one
Yeah.
started at 26. Yeah, 18 to 26 is 8. So now that child who started at 18 basically saved $2,880 more than the 26-year-old. That's the actual capital amount they put in. But the growth from the age of 18 to 65, there was a $750,000 difference between the two. And that's because of something called compounding. You invest the money, it grows, but you don't take it out. You keep it and it grows. So the growth grows as well. And it just gets more and more and more and more. So start as early as you can.
Yeah, no, I think we all know that like compound interest is a concept, but to hear it makes that
It does.
much of a difference, it's bizarre to think about. But no, absolutely, it makes sense when you put it down like that. It's like
Yeah.
like we've said 100 times, it's not that complicated,
No,
when you
no.
break it down, it really makes so much logical sense. So I suppose this is a bit more of a complex one because again, I understand that a question like this really matters when it comes to a person's personal financial
Yeah.
situation. But if we're talking general day-to-day savings and that area, what are some of the most important financial skills and knowledge that people can develop on an everyday level? Because again, I was in a position once where I spent way too much on the daily, and then I've made a few alterations and it's gone down significantly. But I
Yeah.
don't know what you've run into the most, what you've found people do the most.
This is a bit of a general answer, but I think because it has to apply to sort of everyone and everything, I think the most important skills to have, just generally, are discipline and, something that young kids don't really like, but discipline and probably patience. And discipline because, to read, to sit down and read, to sit down and listen is hard. It is hard. It is hard to do that when going out and hanging out with your friends is more fun. When there's Netflix, you need to unwind. You can be sort of just have a bit of escapism and watch something good on TV and, all their social media. But you've got to actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit down for an hour and I'm going to read about this or something like that. That is hard and that takes discipline. And that's what I think it means initially. If you can do that, if you can break away and take the time to educate yourself, educate yourself on something you don't have to educate yourself on, because when you sit down and you study for your degree, you've got to do it. Otherwise you're wasting all that money, that the student loan that you've taken out for university, you're going to come out with a rubbish degree, that's a waste of your time and a waste of money, basically. But
Well,
it
you'd
so
be
it's
surprised how many do it.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But you've got to have, it's a different discipline. It's like an extra discipline. It's like turbocharged discipline to really break away because there aren't really any immediate consequences if you don't sit down and read and start to educate yourself financially. There are long-term consequences, but it's difficult to see those so far ahead. And that discipline, once you kind of can do that, the discipline then sort of translates as it sort of morphs into discipline to sticking to your budget. So the discipline that you went through to make a few daily changes, basically, which probably felt much harder to do than they actually were in practice, once you've done a few of them, basically. So discipline is really, really key. And the other thing is actually patient. Be patient because you're not going to get it straight away. You are not going to understand everything you read straight away. You are not going to know everything you read straight away. You're not going to remember everything you read straight away. You're not going to understand it all straight away, but you've got to keep going. You've got to keep reading. You've got to keep going. And, you know, when you read it, there'll be 101 different things. It'll probably, if you do a good hour or whatever, it'll probably be hundreds of other questions. Oh my God, they talked about this. What is this? What's that? What's that sort of thing? Just be patient. Be patient and keep going, and it will come, basically. So
Yeah.
that is in terms of skill. That is in terms of skill. And I think in terms of knowledge, I think probably the most important knowledge is the knowledge you can give yourself about fees and how much the product is costing you, whether it be an investment product or a really sexy bank account or some advice that you take. How much is it going to cost you? And in the finance world, fees can be very difficult to fathom and they can be very, very well hidden, but there is no such thing as a free lunch, basically. So you've got to find out where they are. And I was helping my son open a current account. Not, he's got his student account, but I encouraged him to open another bank account so that, for example, when he earns from his holiday jobs and stuff, the money will go straight into this second current account. If it went into his student account, it's going to be spent straight away. But I said to him, keep it separate, put it into your second account. And then from there, when you've got the time, you can look at savings accounts, but at least it's segregated from your spending. And in opening that second bank account, we were looking around and a particular bank that he opened it up with, it all came up under the sort of student heading, and there were four different options. And he said that there was, one that was really plain vanilla. And then there was one that offered a little bit of interest on the money that was in the current account. And then there was one that offered the interest in the current account plus this and a few other sort of little perks. And he immediately said, well, I said, right, go for the first one. And we were doing this online. So we were both looking at the same screen, but he was at university. And he said, no, 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 I want to go for that one. And I said to him, no, don't go for that one because there's going to be a cost and they'll charge you for it. And he said, no, 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 it doesn't say there's nothing on it. And he was absolutely right. There was no reference to how much it was going to cost, apart from right at the bottom of the screen, there was this circle with a question mark on it, which is sort of where you would imagine you'd click onto that for further information. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
You clicked onto that to find out how much it cost. So I made him go back and click on each one. And the one that he really wanted to do was going to cost him £5 a month. The middle one was going to cost him £3 a month. And the one that I wanted him to go for, because I've got experience that I knew that all these perks end up costing, was
Yeah.
zero. And so you have to be your own little sleuth and check it out. And £5 paying a bank £5 a month to hold your money, I think is wrong. It's a rip-off,
Oh,
particularly.
absolutely. You're basically paying a subscription service to have money at that point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for a student, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. When you're older, and yes, you do want the free insurance that comes with it. You do want the, I don't know, whatever other perk it was that they were offering. You do want those, maybe because your life is more complicated. You're working, you've got too many balls to juggle. But as a student, you've got all the time in the world to run your own, to do your own work, basically. And so you don't need to pay a bank to do that for you. So yeah, in terms of knowledge, always have in the back of your mind, how much is this costing me? Whether it be the advice, the bank account, or the actual investment product itself, you've got to work out, you've got to find it out. And worst case scenario, you really can't get to the bottom of it, pick up the phone and call the place, the bank,
Yeah.
the DIY platform, and ask them
Because
because
they
they're
legally have to tell you, right?
exactly, and their calls are all recorded, so they've got to give the information.
It's funny we've brought this up actually, because I think I had a very similar experience to your son that really opened my eyes to what in retrospect should have been a very obvious piece of information. And it's that banks aren't offering you these deals to be nice to help you out.
Yeah, yeah,
They want to make money.
yeah,
Obviously, they do.
yeah,
They're not doing it to give you a hand. They're not doing it to give you free
yeah,
money the way
yeah,
they see it.
yeah.
No, it's in it for them. They're obviously doing it to help themselves out, and it's stupid to think any other
And
way.
it may not be at this young age, it may not be that they're trying to make a buck out of you. That not at all, that but I was talking to a retail banker once, and he was saying to me that we really try, we want students to bank with us because if the students start banking with us, chances are when they earn, they'll still be banking with us.
Yeah.
So when they have, or it's the beginning of a long customer relationship, which, in the end should hopefully work for both parties. But that's why you often find, student accounts which are free, they throw in a taste card or I think last year some of them were throwing in a 3-year rail card. That is seriously useful. You know,
Oh,
the
absolutely. Yeah. Rail cards are extortionate.
yeah, if you look in August around A-level results day and UCAS day, if you look at the financial press in August, so those papers that I mentioned, and also I think the Daily Mail would cover these kind of things as well, they usually do a big spread on what are the best student accounts because they know, 14th of August, everybody's getting their A-level results, they're getting ready to go to uni, they're going to be looking, I've got to convert my account into a uni student account. And they do loads of deals. I remember being abroad and seeing in this coffee shop an English newspaper and just deciding to flick through it. And I found this double page spread. And my son his A levels were next week. So I asked the restaurant, can I take the paper with me, cut it out, and then took it back home. And we had a look and that's how he chose his student account.
Wow.
But they all do it. There's, because you could sit and look up on Barclays, NatWest, Bank of Scotland, Halifax, all of them. But actually, it'd be nice and easy if somebody did it all for you, in a table, which is what this
Yeah.
newspaper has done. But I noticed it last year as well.
I don't know whether I did get too fortunate with mine, but I remember when I didn't actually have a student bank account until about, I think, a year and a half into my university experience. And I didn't really know what the point was for the most part. I thought, well, what's the
Yeah,
difference? Obviously, a student account opens up a lot of options like overdrafts, things like that. But what I
yeah,
didn't realize was because I'd been with Halifax for a certain amount of years with my regular bank account, when I switched over to a student account, I got nothing immediately. It just changed the account type, and I thought that's all it was. I then, like a few months later, got a random payment of £110.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You do, you
I was like,
do.
oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
brilliant.
yeah. NatWest paid 100. That's when my son went. NatWest paid 100, and they gave him a taste card, which was effectively, money off takeaways and going out and stuff like that. So
I'm wishing I'd done that now.
yeah, they really do some good deals. They do some good deals. So look out, people. That's what people should do. Mid-August. It's about mid-August that it all kind of comes together.
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, like really helped me out. So I imagine there's probably significantly better deals than the
Yeah,
one I got. But
yeah,
again, it's any deal's nice,
yeah,
isn't it, to have on the side?
absolutely.
So I think for a really huge one to round things off, then, what are some of the most common financial mistakes you see people making, and how can they be avoided? I understand it's a huge question that, again,
No,
so many of
no.
what I'm asking have
Honestly,
so many different avenues.
yeah, yeah. No, honestly, the most common mistake, I think, certainly for the young, the most common mistake to make is to save what you've got left after spending. That's wrong. That is the wrong way round. Get your money at the beginning of the month, beginning of the week, and say to yourself, right, I'm putting aside X amount, and then spend what's left. Save first, spend after. Now, I understand you may have massive overheads, and you can do this even afterwards. It doesn't matter how small it is, save first. And I think that the second, the money builds up, even £1 a week, it builds up over time. £1 a week is 52 quid at the end of the year. That's quite helpful at Christmas.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice
Yeah.
sum on the side.
Yeah. Yeah. £2 a week is 104 pounds at Christmas. That's even more helpful, you know. Actually, not at Christmas, it's at New Year, even better. You're going out. Imagine having an extra 52 quid or an extra £104 on New Year's Eve, and it really didn't hurt. So I think the biggest mistake is to save after you've finished spending. Don't spend after you've finished saving. Basically, the other way around. Save a bit first and then spend. And then I think the second, it's kind of linked to that, but I think the second mistake is to think that, oh, it's such a small amount, there's no point in bothering. That's the wrong mistake because it all adds up. It all adds up. It starts to earn interest if you can put it somewhere. Most bank accounts most savings accounts you can open with £0, with £1, but it starts earning interest. And interest rates at the moment are, bank base rates of 4.25%, but you can get more than that. You can definitely get more than that. You can get 4.5%. You can get 4.8% at the moment in various places. So that money will be earning interest. So it does build up. So even if it's a tiny, tiny amount, don't just think, oh, there's no point. Do it. We've just given the example of £1 a week is an extra £52 at New Year's Eve. £2 a week is £104 at New Year's Eve. And, there's an old English proverb, which I don't know if you've heard. It's look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves.
Yeah, my granddad said that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I say it all the time. There is a reason why that proverb, which is, I looked it up actually, that the proverb, I think its first use was in a letter of a father to a son in about the 18th century, but people are still quoting it now. And there's a reason people are still quoting it now, because there's
Yeah.
empirical evidence to show that it's true and it works.
Can I say what you've just said there was so initially reassuring and then so humbling immediately after because what the way I've disciplined myself was the first point you made in when I get paid by work every 2 weeks, the first thing I do is put everything except £140 into my savings account. And
Yeah,
then I will not let myself spend more. I've only
yeah,
started doing that recently, but the way I've seen the money skyrocket is
yeah.
ridiculous.
And how
But
old are you? How old are you?
um
20?
I'm 21.
Yeah, yeah, great. Start early and keep going. But do you remember I said the most important skill was the discipline? Because if you're
Mm,
doing it now, you will do it when you get your full-time
yeah.
job. You will keep doing it. And that's the way you've got to think. It's that priority. It's not spend and save, it's save then spend.
However, on the flip side, and the reason I started bursting out laughing is because when you say even small amounts and this kind of thing, for whatever reason, I never put pennies into my savings account. It always has to be a round number, and I don't know why I do it.
Oh, probably because it's easier. Put the pennies in. Put the pennies in.
Yeah, no,
Pennies
absolutely.
in.
That from after this chat, that's what I'm gonna start doing because I
Yeah.
don't I don't know why I do it other than it looks nice.
Yeah, no, no, no. Put the pennies in. Just put the pennies in, random pennies and stuff like that. And don't hang about with small change as well. Coins in your pockets. Chuck it all in. Just nip to the bank or I mean, you can deposit money at the post office. I don't know if a lot of people know this. You can actually
I
use
didn't
the
know that.
yeah, you can go, if you've got a post office that's nearer you. I don't have a bank near me, but I do have a post office near me. So you can just go and pay the cash in, basically. Not every bank can you pay it into, but some of them you can. So just go and ask your post office, can I pay, into my current account? Halifax Bank of Scotland, you can
Yeah, that's
pay.
interesting.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's funny as well, especially when it comes to like loose change and things. But it's funny how I feel like this is going off on a tangent a little bit, but it's so funny how what people claim is loose change can actually rack up to be so much. Because personally, when I find coins in my wallet, I don't think to put those in my bank or put them towards something. I'll be honest, the first claw machine I see, I put them in there,
yeah, yeah,
But I dread to think the amount of pounds across my life.
yeah,
It'll be thousands. It'll be
yeah.
thousands.
Yeah, no, no, no. You should put it in. And if you think you're going to spend it anyway, or you can't be bothered to go to the bank for £3.53 or whatever it is, just stick it in a jar. Stick it in a jar and keep putting it into a
Yeah.
jar and then take the jar, basically. It's the amount of desks that I have seen that have got a couple of quid there, 52p here, just chucked on the desk and that just kind of lives there. It's not really enough to buy anything meaningful sort of thing anymore, but it's just there. And I always think to myself, gosh, that really should go somewhere, you know, into piggy bank and cash. I was at the Bank of England recently. Cash, the guy was telling me that cash is the second most used form of payment in this country. So there is a lot of cash kicking around on people's desks, in people's pockets, down
Oh
the
yeah.
back of the sofa, in people's wallets. There's a lot.
Yep.
So
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's all the straightforward questions I had for you. So I suppose, is there any other pieces of advice that you can think of off the top of your head that we haven't discussed that you want to put out there?
go look at Young Enterprise. Your money matters. Go and get the DIY guides off the platforms. Look at FT Flick. Just start. Start somewhere. Just start. Honestly, just start. And in your particular case, go straight to the DIY platforms now and look up Lifetime ISA. Some of them offer one, some of
Yes.
them don't. Work it out and get cracking.
Yeah.
Honestly, get cracking because that 25% from the government is free money.
True. Yeah. No. No, I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for that. As I say, it's so funny, really, because this is obviously incredible advice for students, but it's kind of rare that I learn something completely new to myself in interviews. So thank you so much for this. It's been
Welcome.
very, very
You're welcome.
helpful.
Well, I hope it's been of help.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Annabelle, thank you for joining us. It's been fantastic.
You're very welcome. Bye, Jayden.
Wonderful.
Nice to have met you.